Steelers Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what just went down in Pittsburgh is absolutely massive. We're talking about a coaching staff that's so locked in on every single detail that they just claimed a punter who literally dominated an entire division of college football. And to make room for him, they had to release a receiver who gave this organization everything he had across 3 different stints. But wait, there's more. The rookie quarterback everyone had questions about just told reporters he can already feel his entire game transforming after only 1 month of work. And here's the kicker. Mike McCarthy, a man who's been coaching NFL offenses for 2 full decades, just went on record saying he has never seen a tight end quite like the one Pittsburgh just handed $42 million to. If you're not subscribed to this channel yet, you need to hit that button right now because we're bringing you the most in-depth Steelers coverage every single day, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's dive into what happened on Tuesday during organized team activities, because this is where the story really begins. The Steelers made a roster move that on the surface might seem like just another transaction. They released a wide receiver named Brandon Johnson. Now, if you're not familiar with Johnson's journey, you might be thinking, okay, another camp body got cut. What's the big deal? But hold on. This move tells us so much more about where this receiver room is headed and how dramatically this entire offense has been transformed heading into the 2026 season. Brandon Johnson is 27 years old. He wasn't some washed-up veteran taking up space. This was his 3rd separate stint with this organization. Think about that for a second. 3 times this young man found his way back to Pittsburgh. 3 times he earned another opportunity. That doesn't happen by accident in the National Football League. You don't get 3 chances with the same franchise unless somebody in that building sees something real in you, unless you're doing things the right way, unless you're putting in the work when nobody's watching. Let me take you back to where Johnson's NFL journey started, because his story deserves way more respect than just being a footnote in a roster update. He came into this league as an undrafted free agent back in 2022 with the Denver Broncos. No fanfare, no guaranteed contract, no media hype, just a young receiver trying to prove he belonged. He spent 2 full seasons grinding it out in Denver, fighting for every single rep, every single opportunity. But in August of 2024, Denver released him. His time with the Broncos was over. Pittsburgh swooped in fast. They signed him to a reserve futures contract in January of 2025. And this is where Johnson's story gets really interesting. During training camp and throughout the preseason, people who were actually watching practice, not just looking at depth charts, they started noticing something. Brandon Johnson was balling out. He was making plays. He was running crisp routes. He was catching everything thrown his way. Coaches were taking notice. Fans who attended camp were talking about him on social media. This wasn't just another guy going through the motions. This was a player who looked like he was about to earn a legitimate roster spot through sheer effort and performance. And then, the worst possible thing happened at the absolute worst possible time. A foot injury. Just like that. All that momentum, all that progress, all those reps that were building towards something real, it all came crashing down. That's the cruelest version of an NFL story, isn't it? You do everything right. You put in the hours. You make the plays. You show the coaching staff exactly what they need to see. And then your own body betrays you. An injury that you can't control takes away the opportunity you earned before you even get the chance to fully cash in on it. But here's what separates guys who just have talent from guys who have real character. Johnson didn't give up. He rehabbed. He fought his way back. And he earned a 3rd stint with this organization. A 3rd opportunity to prove himself in a Steelers uniform. That kind of resilience, that kind of refusal to quit, that's what builds respect in NFL locker rooms. That's what coaches remember when they're making tough decisions down the line. But here's the reality that Brandon Johnson was facing, and it had nothing to do with his work ethic or his talent or his commitment. The Steelers' receiver room in 2026 is completely different from what it was just 1 year ago. This used to be a position of desperate organizational need. This was the biggest question mark on the entire offense. Could the Steelers actually field a competent group of pass catchers? Fast forward to now and look at what this room has become. Pittsburgh went out and traded for Michael Pittman Jr. That's a proven, legitimate NFL wide receiver with years of production. They drafted Jeremiah Bernard in the 2nd round. That's a high-value draft pick, a guy the organization is invested in developing. Roman Wilson, who had an up-and-down rookie season, has been absolutely turning heads throughout OTAs and minicamp. People close to the team are saying he looks like a completely different player. More confident, more composed, smoother in and out of breaks. Then you've got Eli Heigendreich also competing for a roster spot at the back end of the depth chart. So when you step back and look at the full picture, Brandon Johnson was fighting for maybe the last receiver spot on this roster, and he was competing against guys who either have draft capital invested in them, big contracts attached to them, or are showing real developmental progress. That's an almost impossible battle to win, no matter how hard you work. No matter how many plays you make in practice, the numbers game was always going to be brutal. The move that officially ended Johnson's time in Pittsburgh was the corresponding roster move when the Steelers claimed a punter named Aiden LaRose off waivers. And trust me, we're going to talk about LaRose in detail because his story is fascinating. But first, I want to acknowledge what Johnson's release represents. This is a receiver room that has been completely transformed. A player who would have absolutely made this roster just 2 years ago. A guy who fought his way back 3 separate times. He couldn't survive the competition in 2026. That's not a sad story for the Steelers. That's actually a great sign. That means this position group has real depth now, real talent, real options. Brandon Johnson will get another opportunity somewhere. Players with his kind of toughness and resilience always do. Some team is going to give him a chance, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes somebody's roster and contributes this season. But for Pittsburgh, his departure is just another sign that this franchise is building something real at the receiver position for the first time in years. Now let's talk about the guy who took his roster spot. Aiden LaRose, punter, claimed off waivers from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on June 9th. And before you think this is just some random camp leg, let me walk you through what this kid actually accomplished in college because his resume is absolutely worth your attention. LaRose has never played a single snap in an NFL game. He's an undrafted free agent, no draft pedigree, no big name recognition. But what he does have is production. Real, measurable, elite-level production at the college level. Let's start with the 2023 season. LaRose was playing at UT Martin, an FCS program, not a Power 5 school. Not getting national television coverage every week. But you know what he did that season? He led the entire FCS in punting, the entire division. 47.3 yards per punt. That's not just good. That's the best in the country at that level. He wasn't just putting up numbers either, he was getting recognized for it. Consensus first-team All-American. That means voters across multiple organizations all agreed he was one of the best at his position. He won the Big South OVC Football Association Special Teams Player of the Year award. This wasn't some guy just kicking the ball downfield and hoping for the best. This was a dominant, game-changing special teams weapon. Then LaRose transferred to Kentucky for his final 2 seasons of eligibility. And let me be clear, the SEC is a completely different animal than the FCS. The speed is different. The athletes are different. The pressure is different. Some guys who dominate at lower levels get exposed when they step up in competition. That didn't happen with LaRose. He held his own and then some. As a redshirt senior in 2025, LaRose punted 50 times for 2,226 yards. That's an average of 44.5 yards per punt. He ranked 7th in the entire SEC and 31st nationally in the FBS. Again, those aren't just solid numbers. Those are legitimately good numbers against elite competition. He earned SEC Special Teams Player of the Week honors twice during the season. Let me tell you what he did to earn those. Against Eastern Michigan, he averaged 50.7 yards per punt. That's an absolutely massive average that flips field position and puts your defense in a position to dominate. Then, in a road game at Auburn, one of the toughest environments in college football, LaRose placed all 6 of his punts inside the 20-yard line. All 6. That's not luck. That's precision. That's control. That's a punter who understands his job isn't just to kick the ball far, it's to put the opposing offense in the worst possible position to operate. He also handled kickoff duties for Kentucky, and 49 of his 60 kickoffs resulted in touchbacks. He appeared on the Ray Guy Award watch list, which honors the best punter in all of college football. That's the highest level of recognition a college punter can receive. So when you add it all up, Aiden LaRose has a legitimate, substantial, impressive body of work across 2 completely different levels of college football. Now let's be honest about the situation in Pittsburgh. Cameron Johnston is the established starting punter. He's been solid, he's been consistent. Nothing about claiming LaRose off waivers in June automatically changes that. Johnston is the guy until he's not. But here's why this move matters. The Steelers coaching staff watched enough tape on LaRose to believe he deserves a real evaluation this summer. They saw a punter who was the best in the country at the FCS level. They saw a punter who competed at an elite level in the SEC. They saw a player who can flip field position, pin opponents deep, and handle multiple special teams roles. If LaRose comes into training camp and preseason games and shows that his college production translates to the NFL level, this suddenly becomes a genuinely interesting competition. And if Johnston struggles at any point, whether it's consistency issues or an injury or just a rough stretch of games, Pittsburgh already has a credible backup plan in the building. That's smart roster management. That's attention to detail. That's a coaching staff that understands special teams matter, and they're not just going to ignore the punter position because it doesn't get headlines. Now let's shift gears and talk about the future of this franchise. Drew Aller, rookie quarterback, 5th-round pick in the 2026 draft. And after just 1 month in an NFL building, he's already reporting significant progress. That should get every Steelers fan excited about what this kid could become. Aller spoke to reporters after Tuesday's practice, and what he said was not your typical rookie coach speak. He didn't just say he's working hard and learning the playbook. He gave specific, detailed descriptions of how his game is actually changing. He said he feels significantly more comfortable physically. He said he can see the progress showing up on tape when he watches 7-on-7 and team reps. That's a player who's self-aware enough to evaluate his own performance honestly. Here's why what Aller said matters way more than just another offseason practice update. The primary concern about Drew Aller entering the draft was never his arm talent. The kid can sling it. He's got NFL velocity, he can make every throw on the route tree, and his football IQ has always been praised. The concern was his footwork. Scouts and analysts were worried that the mechanical deficiencies in his lower half would mess with his accuracy and decision-making when the speed of the game increased at the NFL level. Lance Zierlein from NFL.com wrote in his pre-draft evaluation that without foundational improvement in confidence, poise, and recognition, Aller risked becoming just an average backup despite all his physical tools. That's a pretty damning assessment, but it wasn't wrong. The footwork issues were real. They showed up on tape. NFL teams noticed. But here's what the Steelers did the moment Aller walked into their facility. They identified footwork as priority number 1. They didn't try to fix 5 things at once. They didn't overwhelm him with scheme and adjustments. They went straight to the foundation. They started breaking down his old habits and rebuilding his mechanics from the ground up during rookie minicamp, which ran from May 8th to May 10th. ESPN's Brooke Pryor documented the process in May, and she described it perfectly. The coaching staff essentially uninstalled his old operating system and started building new software from scratch. That's not an exaggeration. They literally took apart the way he'd been moving his feet for years and started over with a completely new approach. 1 month later, Drew Aller is describing the results in language that should make every quarterback coach smile. He said he looks like he's playing slower, and then he clarified, that's a good thing. Playing slow means you're not rushing. You're not panicking. You're processing information at the right speed. He said he's thinking fast, but his feet are playing slow. That's the exact balance every quarterback is trying to find. Your brain needs to be moving at full speed to process coverages and defensive looks, but your feet need to stay calm and controlled so you're delivering the ball on time and in rhythm. Aller said he knows when he's not in rhythm just based on his feet. That's a player who has internalized a new process. He's not just doing what coaches tell him. He's feeling it. He's recognizing it in real time. That's exactly what developmental progress looks like for a young quarterback. Now let's be realistic about Aller's role in 2026. He's almost certainly going to redshirt this season. Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback and he's going to handle this offense. But the longer-term question for this franchise is whether Aller can develop into a reliable third quarterback this summer, which would simplify all the roster decisions the coaching staff still has to make before Week 1. Everything Aller said on Tuesday points in the right direction. This kid is coachable. He's self-aware. He's putting in the work, and most importantly, he's already seeing real results. And now we get to the most exciting part of this entire story. Darnell Washington, tight end, 24 years old, and Mike McCarthy, a head coach with 20 years of NFL coaching experience, just said he has never seen a tight end quite like him. Let that sink in for a second. McCarthy has coached in this league for 2 decades. He's worked with elite offensive talent. He's game planned against every type of player imaginable. And he's saying Washington is different from anything he's ever seen. McCarthy was asked about Washington during OTAs on Tuesday, and he absolutely lit up when talking about him. He called Washington a complete Y tight end. He said he's been so impressed with him throughout the offseason program. And then McCarthy said the line that should have every Steelers fan hyped for this season. He said, "To have a tight end that can line up next to the tackle and block a defensive end, that has not been the norm in the last couple of decades in the National Football League." Think about what that actually means. Washington does something that virtually no tight end in the modern NFL can do. He can align in a traditional tight end position, release off the line and run routes in the passing game like a receiver, and also line up next to an offensive tackle and physically match up against a defensive end in the run game. That's a throwback skill set. That's how the position was played in the 1990s when offenses operated primarily under center and tight ends were true Y players who did everything. McCarthy went even further. He said Washington gives this offense the ability to play under center football the way it was played in the 90s. That's not coach speak. That's not a generic compliment. That's a head coach identifying a specific tactical advantage that he's genuinely excited to deploy in game situations. But Washington isn't just a blocker. McCarthy also called him a matchup problem in the passing game, especially in the red zone and on third down situations. He praised Washington's attention to detail in meetings, his work ethic throughout the offseason program, and his consistency showing up every single day. Then McCarthy said Washington has a lot of value for this offense. Last season, Washington caught 31 passes for 364 yards and 1 touchdown. Those are solid numbers, but they're not jaw-dropping. So why did Pittsburgh just give him a 4-year, $42 million extension? Because it's not about what he's already done. It's about what McCarthy and this coaching staff see him becoming in an offense specifically designed to unlock everything that makes him different. Washington is 6'7", 264 pounds. He moves like someone who should not be that big. And now he's in an offense run by a head coach who understands exactly how to use a tight end who can do things nobody else in the league can do. That's a matchup nightmare waiting to happen. Here's what all of this adds up to. Steelers Nation. This is what an organization looks like when it's locked in at every single level. A receiver who fought his way back to Pittsburgh 3 times and never stopped grinding got released. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because this receiver room became too talented and too deep for him to survive. That's the hardest kind of NFL story, but it's also proof that this position group is in the best shape it's been in years. A punter who led an entire division of college football in his position got claimed off waivers because someone in this building watched his tape and saw something worth evaluating. That's a coaching staff that pays attention to every detail and every roster spot. A rookie quarterback who came into the league with legitimate concerns about his footwork spent 1 month rebuilding his mechanics from scratch and is already reporting that he can feel the difference. That's player development done right. And a head coach with 2 decades of NFL experience just said he's never seen a tight end like the one this franchise just paid $42 million to keep around. That's a weapon that could change everything about how this offense operates. Every single one of these situations points to the same conclusion. This organization is dialed in. Every roster spot is being evaluated with intention. Every player is being developed with a clear plan. And the pieces being assembled right now are building towards something this city has been waiting for. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it right now. Because tomorrow there's more news coming out of Pittsburgh, and you absolutely do not want to miss it.